If I could tell new parents one thing, it would be to learn the signs for pediatric sleep apnea. You might think that sleep apnea only impacts older men who snore, but sleep apnea can actually occur at any point in the lifespan, in any gender, and when left untreated in babies and toddlers, it can have a huge impact on sleep quality and your child's broader well-being. Our sleep clinics focus on the behavioural aspects of sleep, but we always screen for sleep apnea and refer on when needed. So let's learn the 4 key signs every parent needs to be on the lookout for. Welcome back to Brand New Little People, the podcast companion to the Sunbelt Pediatric Sleep Clinic programs created by us. I'm Dr. Fallon Cook and I'm here with Dr. Laura Conway, and we're the directors of Infant Sleep Australia. Laura, how have you been?
Yeah, I've been good, thank you. We've been having a busy time between us, haven't we? Both you and I, with the clinic and various things happening in our personal lives. I think you're living in just a tiny little shell of a house at the moment.
Yeah. The whole back of my house is currently missing. So now when I walk out to the kitchen, I can see the stars. So it's a little wild, and people who have had a coaching call with me have probably heard a lot of the demo and the hammering, and yeah, it has been pretty crazy, and the usual kind of sick kids and just busy life. It has been wild. So yeah, our episodes have been a little more sporadic than normal just because we have a lot to navigate at the moment.
Yeah, but we have a lot of questions that we will be answering in today's podcast. So if you've been waiting for an answer, hopefully you will hear it in today's episode. And if it has been missed just because of the kind of chaotic nature of our lives at the moment, do just send us a reminder and we will answer it in the next podcast.
Yes, please do send that reminder, because it's my fear. I always think, oh my God, what if a parent is waiting for us to answer a question and it's somehow slipped past us, and then they think we don't care? We do care. We really do care. So yeah, if you haven't heard an answer to your question, please do send it again. We do our best, but the admin side of things can get a little bit hectic. But speaking about emails, we got 2 really, really lovely emails. One was from Kath, who sent in the most gorgeous video of her baby settling in the cot. It's so cute. She sort of is doing this really, really cute little flappy dance where she's smiling and flapping her little arms around. And Kath was saying that lately her little one's been doing much better on just 2 naps each day, that change really, really helped. So thank you. When parents send photos and videos, oh my God, it makes my day. I love it.
Yeah,
it's so nice kind of actually seeing the difference in these children. So please do share them with us.
I'm thinking that this is a baby who used to not like the cot and is now very, very smiley and happy in the cot. So it's really wonderful to see. Yeah, so that was lovely to get that. So thank you so much, Kath. And I think we had another email that was lovely from, is it Fiona?
Fiona, who sent in quite a few questions and emails over the last little while, sent a really lovely email congratulating us on our 100th episode. And it is just so lovely. We appreciate you all so much. Just getting that feedback, it makes such a difference. So if anyone else wants to stroke our egos, please send through your gorgeous baby photos or toddler photos, and because it's so lovely, so rewarding. Wow, shall we dive into this week's topic? So this was the topic of sleep apnea kind of came up in our social media channel, and a few people were asking questions around what it is and how to identify it. And I thought this is a really good topic to go into, because even just before this episode started, we were kind of saying, we each had friends who who had babies and toddlers that probably had sleep apnea. They've had enlarged tonsils or adenoids or really loud snoring and other sorts of signs that really indicate that something's not quite right. But it's just been entirely missed. Sometimes for years, these children have had really significant sleep problems that probably could have been resolved a whole lot sooner. So do we start with, what is sleep apnea?
Yeah, absolutely. So, sleep apnea is a disorder where breathing stops and starts during sleep. Essentially, it's the airflow, sorry, being blocked in the upper airways. And the structures of the throat, they may be larger than usual, or there may be some other structural differences that result in the airway blocking. And this can result in poor quality sleep, daytime fatigue, and just general a little bit miserable during the day. It can also result
Mm.
in gasping, coughing during sleep, snoring, mouth breathing, etc.
Yeah,
Um,
yep. And that probably
yeah.
brings us on to those sort of four key signs that we really want parents to be on the lookout for. And these are things that I really think we need every parent to know to look out for these things, because these cases so often do get missed. The first one I think is one of the most important ones. If you're noticing pauses in breathing during sleep, it is never normal to
Mm.
have a baby or toddler just stop breathing for a period and then begin again. So I think
Mm.
that's probably one of the ones that
Yeah.
if parents notice it, you're probably going to look into it and investigate further. What are some of the sort of common things that you pick up on that parents, say in clinic, Laura?
Yeah, so snoring or noisy breathing during sleep, including sudden gasping for air, it's never normal. I know that in our culture we will sometimes describe it as cute or funny, but it actually
Mm,
isn't cute or funny. And
or
even though
normal.
we may, yeah, or normal, yes. So I think the reason we think it's cute is because, like you were saying in the intro, we associate snoring with old men. And so when we see a
Yeah.
new baby snoring, everyone goes, "Oh, that's so cute," but it's not. So anyone who's been to see
Mm,
me in the clinic will know that's one of the questions I always ask: is there any snoring or mouth breathing or noisy breathing
mm,
during sleep? Um, Parents may often say that they sometimes do hear snoring or noisy breathing whilst their child has a respiratory illness, and in that case it's probably okay, but because it's due to the just the mucus in the little pipes. But if you find that it persists when they are well, then definitely see your GP.
I think that's a
Yeah, what
really
other
good
signs
tip.
are there, Fallon?
Well, I'd also say to parents too, some of them will say, oh, yeah, they snore, but it's when they're in their car seat or when they're in the pram and their head has kind of slipped
Mm,
forward. So if it's just positional and pretty rare, I wouldn't be too worried. But yeah, snoring or just really heavy, kind of noisy breathing. Yeah, it's a really clear sign that something is up. But you
mm,
touched on this next one briefly, Laura. It's, sleeping with the mouth wide open, or they might also just have their head thrown right back because that can help to kind of
mm.
elongate and open up the airway. And usually in those cases, you'll see some breathing through the mouth as well. And these can be signs that, yeah, tonsils or adenoids might be enlarged and making it pretty hard to, for them to be able to draw in air easily. And that can have a
Yeah.
big impact on sleep, and
Mm,
also speech development as well, because if there are kind of enlarged tonsils and adenoids, it can, it's interrupting airflow. Often that's also happening in the daytime as well.
mm.
So if your toddler's breathing through their mouth most of the time, definitely, yeah, worth getting that checked out. Um,
Yeah. I just wanted to
and then,
jump
so,
in there, Fallon, and say sometimes, particularly with older children, ones that are in beds already, what we can sometimes see is that they get themselves into odd positions on the bed where they hang their head over the back or over the side of the bed, of the mattress. So their head's kind of hanging off,
mm,
and parents come in and reposition them and position their chin further down to their chest, and tuck them back in and leave the room, only for their child to reposition themselves again and tip their head over the mattress. The parents are inadvertently going in and closing the airways.
mm,
And then the child, don't worry, the
right.
child will reposition themselves again. So you're not going to be causing your child to stop breathing. But it's just if you're finding that that's something that's happening for your older children. then that is also
Yeah.
a sign that it's worth getting things checked out.
Yeah, bit of a red flag. And then the final thing I would say is if you're noticing any of those kind of three things, so pauses in breathing during sleep, or noisy breathing or snoring, or mouth wide open, or mouth breathing, and it's coupled with, very restless sleep. So sort of tapping into what you said there, Laura, they might move around a lot in their sleep. Or yeah, just be kind of constantly, I don't know, just restless, I guess. Parents often sort of describe it as, oh, they never really stop moving. Or if they're just seeming really tired, even after appearing to have had a lot of sleep overnight. That's another thing to look out for, excessive sort of daytime sleepiness. When you think, why, they've had a really, a good amount of sleep overnight. And of course, if you're worried, that's the other factor, like if you think something's just not right here. And we see that in clinics sometimes, like if parents and they've got maybe a toddler who just keeps waking at night no matter what we do, it's really really persistent, there's no signs of sleep apnea or any other physiological reason for sleep disturbance, but the parents are like, something is just a bit off. I'm just like, go get a referral, see an ENT, check it off the
Yeah.
list. Like, probably not going to be anything, but you're going to feel better if you have checked that out. But that's really when, if we've got no signs of sleep apnea, that would be kind of probably one of the last things we would do. Generally, we would be working on some different behavioural strategies, in the absence of any sort of symptoms of sleep apnea. But yeah, for some parents, it does get to that point where they're like, I've just got to leave no stone unturned.
Yeah. And Fallon, why is it important to see a GP if you are noticing any of those signs that we've just described?
Yeah, so your GP will refer you to an ENT, which is an ear, nose, and throat specialist. And that ENT will be able to really check out your child's airways. They just have a really good look at things. Obviously not my field, so they have all sorts of tools and tricks up their sleeve. Maybe we should get an ENT on the podcast, actually. That would be very, very interesting.
Yeah, it would.
But the ENT can really work out, is there a problem? Does it need to be treated? And they're just ruling something out. It ticks something off your list, and you can kind of put it to the side and go, okay, that wasn't a problem for my child. Or if treatment's needed, obviously you're on the right pathway then. But what I would say is, don't be afraid to push for a referral. I see a lot of families who say they told their GP that the baby snores quite loudly, and they were just like, oh, they'll grow out of it. It's nothing. Some kids just do that. So I think there's a bit of work to do in getting more GPs kind of up to speed on the fact that snoring is never normal. And they should always be referred onto an ENT to get checked out. There are, cases where people don't show any signs. I'm talking about older adults, though, don't show the sort of obvious signs of sleep apnea, but they actually are having pauses in breathing all through the night. So, yeah, if you think something's up, really push your GP for that referral. And I wouldn't take a kind of let's wait and see approach. If your child's, showing some of these signs and they're otherwise well, they're not having a respiratory sort of virus or something, I would be just getting straight onto it. Really important to move on these things. And that kind of brings us to our
take a video.
Next point.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah, take a video.
Yeah, take a video. So if you are observing your baby or toddler snoring, take a video of it. You could take it more than once so that you can demonstrate that, maybe it's a few across a week or a couple of weeks, depending on how long it takes you to get in to see your GP, so that you can demonstrate that it wasn't just a one-off, that it's something that has happened more than once. And that's just really helpful for your GP as well, because they will be looking for things that we don't, as non-medics, we wouldn't know about, but it's really helpful information for them. So that's a hot tip.
Yeah, I'm glad you thought of that, Laura, because you're right. It's so good to be able to show what you're actually experiencing at home. And maybe let's talk about the potential impacts when sleep apnea is left untreated, because I know we've each seen some cases where sleep apnea has been left untreated for years and there can be some pretty serious repercussions.
So if we think about just whilst it's happening, what we know is that babies and toddlers and children, anyone who has got sleep apnea, they are going to be in a situation where their body wakes them overnight. If our body is not getting all the oxygen it needs, it's going to wake us up. So whilst the sleep apnea is untreated, there's going to be ongoing night wakes. And that means that the sleep quality that your child or yourself you will be having is going to be compromised, because your child is going to be waking out of different stages of sleep and not getting the restorative sleep that they want, and then that they need. And then that has knock-on effects into the day, where they may have really poor mood because they haven't had all of the REM sleep, for example, that they need, which we know is really important for emotion regulation and memory processing and learning. So they can really be quite moody in the day. They may have some really extreme behaviors, particularly for toddlers. So they may be really hyperactive, or they may be really, have big outbursts and really feel things strongly, which seems even more so compared to other toddlers a similar age. Oftentimes, once we address sleep apnea, parents report that their child's behaviour kind of settles down a little bit. What else do we see, Fallon?
Yeah, so we know that even just from our own research, Laura, if sleep is problematic over an extended period of time, sort of going into the toddler years, that there seems to be an association with language development. Obviously, if you're really, really tired, engaging in back and forth conversations that help to build children's language skills is a lot harder. And if your parents are exhausted as well, they're just, it's pretty hard to have those enriching language developing kind of interactions, when you're in that state too. And of course, if there are structural differences in your child's, throat and that sort of thing, that can just impact making different speech sounds and things as well. But also there's changes in growth and development. So if your child's got really enlarged tonsils or adenoids and they always have their mouth open all the time, it can actually change how the facial shape develops as well. And of course, having pauses in your breathing, it's putting a lot of strain on a little body too. And there's some evidence that sleep apnea creates an increased risk for SIDS episodes too. So it's a pretty horrible picture that we're painting here, but I think it helps to really underscore how important it is, if you're noticing some of those signs, to just get it checked out and rule it out. You don't want to get 3 or 4 years down the track and be like, my toddler's, preschooler is wild. They're really struggling to settle in, at childcare or kindergarten. Their language is behind. No one can understand what they're saying. You don't want to get in that situation where everything has become incredibly difficult. If we can identify these things really early on, there are treatments available, and you can get the expert support that you need. So let's rehash what those 4 things are. I think we've got number 1 is, are there pauses in breathing during sleep? They can be pretty hard to notice, so you might not even notice that one, but they might be happening. Is there snoring or noisy breathing during sleep? It's probably the easiest one to pick up on. Are they sleeping with their mouth wide open or their head thrown back, or always breathing through their mouth, or often breathing through their mouth? And are any of those things sort of coupled with that restless sleep or seeming really tired in the daytime? Or are you simply just feeling like something's a bit off? And that would be a good reason to, any one of those things are a good reason to see your GP, get a referral to an ENT, and hopefully you'll rule out any problem. But if treatment's needed, well, you're off on the right path to getting that treatment.
Yeah. Awesome.
Awesome's our go-to word, I think, transitioning between one segment to the next.
Yeah, it is. So shall we move on to parent questions now, Fallon?
Let's do it. We've got a lot to get through for parent questions, so let's just fire through them, because I think over 102 episodes now, we've talked about a lot of these things before, so I reckon we're going to get faster at answering them.
I think we will. So let's start with Emma's question. So Emma has a 5.5 8.5-month-old whose sleep has dramatically improved using the quick fade approach. They've gone from
Yay.
feeding to sleep and not transferring until 1 or 2 in the morning, to now
Oh,
settle.
ouch.
Yeah, would have been hard. And now
Oh, I'd die.
Emma's baby is settling in the cot between 7:30 and 8 and sleeping until 7:30 in the morning with just one overnight feed. Well done,
Great.
Emma. That's awesome. However, Emma says day naps remain difficult. Her baby often refuses to nap in the cot, even with 1 to 2 rounds of quick fade. If she persists, her baby just screams, and they usually need to nap in the pram or the car instead. And the baby falls asleep easily in this way. Emma asks, how can they help their baby nap in the cot during the day?
Look, I would say this is a case where nighttime sleep has become so good and such high quality that this baby just doesn't have a lot of sleep drive during the daytime for those naps. So if they would rather not be napping when they're put in the cot, they're just going to be pretty reactive to that. So I would say if they're napping on the go in the pram or the car at the moment, that's not a problem at all. I mean, it's not for me, but I'm not the one doing it. But
Yeah.
what I mean is if you're actually really happy to do that, you absolutely can just keep doing your naps on the go in the pram or the car.
Yeah.
If you're really like desperately wanting at least, one nap in the cot during the day, I would, I would probably just wait a little, because I would say when they transition from 3 naps down to 2 with much longer time awake, that sleep pressure is going to be a bit higher. I suspect this baby's still on 3 naps. That sleep pressure will be a lot higher when they're awake longer. And then you just want to replicate that nighttime sleep environment for their nap. So make it pitch black, do a miniature version of your bedtime routine, and you'll probably find that that's when it will come together and they will do that nap in the cot. But well done, Emma. Sometimes this happens. The nights become so gloriously good that then the naps feel a bit tricky, and it's fine to manage it with the pram or the car, and eventually it will come together.
Yeah, great.
Awesome.
Okay, so we have a question from Katie next.
Katie?
Do you want to read that one out?
Yeah. So Katie's 8-month-old still takes 3 naps a day. Well, that's pretty old for 3 naps. And he's a cat napper. Okay, so usually just 30 minutes for a nap. Occasionally, for another caregiver, Katie's baby will nap for 60 to 90 minutes in the cot. Isn't that always the way? But just not for Katie. Poor Katie. Oh, why do they do it to us?
Yes.
So Katie
and all
says,
the other caregivers are saying, they're not a problem for me.
Yeah, what are you talking about? They're nap fine. Oh, poor Katie. Okay, so Katie says her baby wakes happy after short naps, has 4 to 5 hours awake before bed, and sleeps well overnight from 8 p.m. to 7 a.m. with just one feed. And Katie would like to know if her baby is sleeping well overnight and not showing signs of needing the nap transition, dropping down naps, should she encourage dropping a nap simply due to age? And if so, how should she approach it?
I reckon that the reason that Katie's baby is continuing to have the cat naps is probably because her baby is ready to move to 2 naps. And if you move to 2 naps more consistently, Katie, your baby is probably more likely to have longer naps for you as well as for the other caregivers. So look, if it's working okay for you and you don't mind the fact that she only cat naps for you, keep her on just the 3 naps for now. But I'm saying she, but I'm not actually sure if it's they. Maybe I should use they. So if they are happy on the 3 naps, you're happy on it, and the nights are still good, there's no pressure for you to move to fewer naps. However, if you start to feel that it's not quite working for you, you would prefer to have longer naps, then I would say pick a day when you're going to make this transition. Keep your baby awake a little bit longer in the morning before you put them down for their first nap, and see if then with that slightly longer time awake in the morning, they can actually link a cycle in their cot. And then again, push a longer time awake before you put them down for their second nap. Again, you might find that then they may do one longer nap. Again, they might link 2 sleep cycles. if then there is just way too long, 6 hours, say, before the start of the night, and they're not going to be able to manage it, then give them that 15 or 20-minute power nap just to get them through until bedtime. And then the next day, try again. You should find that then with those longer stretches awake, the longer naps begin to stabilize. Is there anything else you would add, Fallon?
Only to not expect it to be instant. I think a lot of parents make that mistake. They go, well, one day I did try to go to 2 naps to see if they'd nap longer, and they didn't. So that's not the problem. And it's like, no, you've got to do it for a few days to really see if those naps will consistently lengthen. And, if they're mostly having like 3 short naps, they're probably not going to do a heap more total day sleep. It might just be a 1-hour nap in the morning and 30 minutes in the afternoon. So good luck, Katie. Hopefully that will all come together. I think, you're right, Laura, as they move on to 2 naps. All right.
Leah.
Do you want to read out Leah?
Yeah. So Leah has an 11-month-old who still breastfeeds to sleep for naps, bedtime, and for overnight wakes. Leah is using a new daily rhythm, which has seen a reduction in the overnight wakes. Now, her baby is waking just once or twice a night rather than 3 to 5 times. Well, thank goodness for that, Leah. Gosh, that would be hard. 11 months old, still waking 5 times a night. You'd be shattered, Leah. Leah writes that bedtime is between 9 and 9:30, wake up is between 8 and 8:30, and her baby has 2 hours across 2 naps. Leah wants to know if it is normal for an 11-month-old to still feed overnight, especially as her little one has allergies and is making slow progress with eating solids. And she has a second question, which is, when should they move their baby to their own room? And should this be done before or after their baby learns to fall asleep independently?
Oh, this is so interesting. So let's start with the feeding question. Is it normal for an 11-month-old to still feed overnight? I mean, there's loads of 11-month-olds who will feed overnight. They don't need to usually. Like if weight gain's fine and they're doing well on solids, usually we would say, look, they don't have to feed overnight. And if they're waking up kind of expecting a feed, it might be worth starting to wean down those feeds, and we probably would see that child sleep longer stretches at nighttime once the feeds stop. But if they've got allergies, then that's a whole different kettle of fish. How severe are the allergies? Like one of my children had very few foods they could eat at all. So they needed to be, having bottles overnight for, I don't even remember now, I've erased it from my memory, but a very long time, because it was essential to him meeting his caloric needs. If we're talking about being allergic to 1 or 2 different things, probably you don't need to keep night feeds. So I think it's a question for your pediatrician or dietitian, whoever's helping you manage those allergies. And if they're slow with the solid foods, you've really got to talk to the same specialist, pediatrician or your dietitian, about, are they slow to learn how to eat solid food because they're feeding overnight and they just don't have much drive. They're not overly hungry. They know they can get calories later by feeding overnight. So why should I try to learn this very complicated, tricky thing? Because eating is actually a pretty big skill to learn. Or is it that, they actually can't take on more calories through solid foods, in which case your dietitian or pediatrician might say, keep the night feeds a bit longer. So really, it's not a question that I can answer. I think it's really going to be very dependent on the individual child. And you know what? Who cares if it's normal or not too? Like if you want to feed a couple of times overnight, like it's fine. But if it's something you're wanting to reduce and you're dealing with allergies or problems with solid foods, chat to your healthcare team about what's appropriate to do. And then the next part of that question, should they move their baby to their own room, and should this be done before or after learning to fall asleep independently? I don't think there's a really clear-cut answer to this one. So sometimes I would say already Leah's baby is a little bit of a unicorn baby, because they're feeding to sleep all the time and only waking was it twice it's twice
once or twice, sometimes just once. So
that's amazing. There are multiple times that
really
that
great.
baby's waking up and instead of going, oh my god, I'm not feeding anymore, they're just going, I'm not feeding anymore, but I don't really care and I'm gonna self-settle. So this child is self-settling multiple times per night and already has some independent settling skills in place. So that should give you some confidence when you do go to make that shift to independent settling, all of the time. Is it better to do it when they're in your room or in their own room? Generally, if parents are feeling ready for it, I would say pop them in their own room, because it's sort of like they go, oh, where am I? New room, new rules. They're not knowing what to expect. If there has been any co-sleeping, well, now the shared bed is out of sight, out of mind. So that can often be, a really good reset to just put them in this new sleep space, still giving them loads of support, and you can even sleep in there with them if you want to. But yeah, sometimes that can actually be really helpful with that transition. And I think so often families don't realize how often, parents are waking the babies and the babies are waking the parents. Yes. And then they sleep in different rooms. Everyone's like, whoa, I got the best sleep of my life because, we weren't waking each other all night. So that's another thing to consider as well. So I hope that answer gives you some guidance and something to think about, Leah. But what would you say, Laura?
Especially Leah, if you do decide alongside the pediatrician and or dietitian that the breastfeeds overnight can go, it may be easier if you are in the different room from your baby overnight, because they're not then coming up into light sleep at their usual feed time and going, oh, there's mum. Right there.
I can see her.
Hello. Can I have that feed now? So they'll be coming up into light sleep going, oh, nothing's changed since I went to sleep, and, more likely to then sleep pressure put them into their next cycle. You may find it's actually a little bit easier if your boobs aren't in eyesight of your baby overnight, if you decide to drop those overnight feeds. I'd also say, Leah, that if it's working for you, it does sound like you do have a unicorn baby. You don't have to work on independent settling at this point if you don't want to. Of course, there will come a time where you may not want to be feeding your baby to sleep, and that's perfectly reasonable as well. But don't feel pressured into making that change if you aren't ready for it at this point in time.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. All right. So now we've got a question from Jacinta, who has a 6.5-month-old baby girl who self-settles within 5 to 10 minutes, sleeps just under 11 hours overnight, and for 2.5 hours a day across 3 naps. She wakes 1 to 3 times overnight, usually requiring a short feed before quickly returning to sleep. Jacinta has tried 2 approaches to reduce the night feeds. She's tried scheduled feeds and dream feeds, and both caused long resettles and disrupted naps. Mood was up and down, and wake time was variable. She writes that hands-on settling was not effective. So she'd like to know, when dropping night feeds disrupts sleep, how much catch-up sleep in the day is appropriate without affecting nighttime sleep pressure? And how can she reduce night feeds without causing split nights or early wakes, given that hands-on settling seems counterproductive?
I think these 2 questions are really closely linked. If when you are looking to reduce those feeds overnight and you're making the choice to do it rather than your baby making the choice to do it, we have to remember that we're taking something away from them that they want. They don't need it at 6.5 months. I'm assuming, Jacinta, your baby is on solids, weight gain is fine, etc., and that's why you're reducing the feeds overnight. So some babies, when we look at taking away some night feeds that they no longer need, will really protest about it because they don't want that to change. They like it. And so then we can find that the resettling can take quite a long time because they're thinking, come on, surely anytime now the feed's going to come. And if we then let them sleep in the morning and give them catch-up sleeps to make up for the time that they were awake, then it does disrupt that sleep pressure regulation the next day, because it's like we're trying to fill that proverbial bucket with water and we keep poking holes in it. If the bucket is the water going in is the sleep pressure, every time we're giving a baby extra catch-up sleep, when we're trying to change something about how they sleep, we're just poking a hole in it. And so that would mean that the next night your baby is still going to have the reserves to protest really loudly when again you don't give them a feed, and then that can really start to chip away at your confidence too, because you know it's appropriate for them to have fewer feeds overnight, but they don't want to drop that feed. You're pushing ahead. They then are awake for a long time. You then let them sleep in the morning, and then we're just on this merry-go-round that everyone wants to get off. So I would actually say, if you've made that decision to drop the feeds, it's appropriate for you and your baby, then try and avoid letting your baby have long sleep-ins or catch-up sleeps, so that you can try and hold that wake-up time steady in the morning. Potentially, you might put them to bed a little bit earlier that night, but not loads earlier, because we normally find that when sleep pressure is just right, normally it only takes a couple of nights for your baby to learn that there are only X number of feeds overnight now, or there's no feeds overnight now. But it only happens that quickly if we hold things steady.
Yes.
Yeah.
I 100% agree. I actually think we have to be quite militant on sticking to that schedule in those first few days, because otherwise there is that slippage, where we just are in this cycle of, well, it takes me forever to resettle them without a feed overnight. Then they have this catch-up sleep, and then the next night's just as bad. If we are really militant with the timing, even if you woke up for 3 hours overnight, we're getting up on time, we're pushing through the day on as close to our normal rhythm as we can. When, within 2 or 3 days, they've dropped the feeds, they're done, and they're sleeping longer at night because their drive to sleep is so strong. So it's one of those cases where it's like, either go all in or don't touch it until you're feeling ready to go all in.
Yeah.
Because if we keep allowing that little bit of catch-up sleep, like, I feel Jacinta's pain. It is really, really hard to keep going. So it might be a case of just going, oh, we've got these 3 days, I've got some extra supports around me at this time, I'm going to go all in on my daily rhythm. We're going to drop down to 1 feed or whatever it is you're dropping down to, or maybe you're dropping the final feed, and just do it. And it's the quickest way through. It's a great question, though, Jacinta. Thanks for submitting that, because I think that it's something that catches out a lot of parents. We go, oh, they had a bad night, we definitely need to let them catch up on some sleep. But it can actually make things so much harder in the long run.
Yeah, for sure. And since your baby doesn't like really hands-on settling, you're likely to need to use the supported accelerated approach, so that it's your baby isn't getting irritated at your hands-on patting when they're going, but I want to feed, pick me up. I can imagine that would be really aggravating for them. So hold steady on that timing, use a more hands-off approach, and have the support around you, and you'll be out the other side within just a few days.
You've got this, Jacinta. We've helped so many parents out of this particularly tricky little ditch that parents fall in sometimes. So you can absolutely get through this. Let us know how you go.
Okay, our next question is from Annie, who has a very little baby. So she has an 8-week-old baby girl. So congratulations, Annie. And Annie says that she sleeps well when held or in a carrier, but in the bassinet, she wakes after 40 minutes. She settles well initially, but after 20 minutes begins grunting, straining, and crying until waking fully. They have resorted to shift sleeping at night to hold her for longer stretches. Oh, that's really hard. So Annie asks, firstly, how to tell the difference between active sleep and true unsettledness? And secondly, should they keep encouraging bassinet sleep at this stage or try something else? Good questions there.
This is a fantastic question. So she's sleeping well initially, but after 20 minutes in the bassinet, starts grunting, straining, and crying until she fully wakes at that 40-minute mark. That is such a great example of in light sleep, babies can be so noisy. They can be asleep and still cry and do all sorts of things. So it is totally normal. And how you can tell the difference between active sleep and true unsettledness is if they're really unsettled, if there is something wrong, or discomfort, pain, hunger, etc., they will cry and they will, at that point, open their eyes. They will be so much more active in their upset, I suppose, over whatever it is that's bothering them. It's really common for this to happen because it's just a shift from being generally, held really close and having a lot of firm pressure around them to being on their back, and the pressure is just on their back. And it just takes some adjusting too. So with what you describe, Annie, I wouldn't be saying, oh no, don't do bassinet settling. I'd say keep practicing it because you're making some inroads here. It's great that she's doing a full sleep cycle in the bassinet. I actually think that's brilliant. Some babies will do 10 minutes or they just won't even transfer at all. You just can't even get them in there. So I think that's really good. And you could build your day around her having, maybe more naps, but shorter naps if you're really wanting to practice the cot settling, and that would be totally fine.
Yeah.
And then in terms of should they keep encouraging bassinet sleep at this stage or try something else, I would very strongly recommend that you keep on with it. And the reason I say that, normally I'd be like, well, it's up to you and what do you feel like doing? But I get a bit of a shiver when I hear parents say that they're, taking turns at night to hold the baby, to keep the baby asleep, because that is when accidents happen. And as parents, we've got to look after your well-being, your sleep quality, your mental health. I haven't met a parent who is, doing that kind of shift we said all the time, where they might be, holding the baby for hours, trying to stay awake or sitting in a chair or something, who has good mental health. Because as humans, you have to have good sleep to have good mental health.
Yeah.
Like you can't really, have one and not the other. So that makes me concerned about the parents, but it does make me really concerned about Annie's baby, because we never think we're going, it's like with driving. No one who crashes their car because they fall asleep at the wheel ever thought that they were about to fall asleep at the wheel and crash their car, or we would be waking ourselves up. You don't know when you're suddenly going to drop off to sleep. And that's what makes it really, quite dangerous. So I would say in this case, I would go all in with the bassinet settling, practice it a lot, because after probably a week of doing all the settles in the bassinet, keep resettling in the bassinet overnight, build the support around you that you need to survive that very tricky week. But then you've got a baby who's like, oh yeah, I'm fine here. My parents have supported me. I've gotten used to it. It's not unfamiliar to me. I know it's safe. I'm comfortable. It's all good. And then all that risk just goes away because this baby's always sleeping in a safe place. And we've got two parents who will eventually be better rested once we get through that transition. And what I would also just add to this is if that just feels like too much for Annie, this is where I would reach out to an early parenting centre and get some supports in to help you with that settling. Because for some parents, trying to weather that transition to settles in the bassinet or the cot, it exceeds capacity, and it's not your fault. It's just a product of the circumstances that we're all parenting in, or so many of us are, where we don't have always have the supports that we need around us. And sometimes these hurdles can feel, 100 meters high. And, we just do need that enhanced support to get through.
Yeah, I think that is such a compassionate answer, Fallon. Yeah, like you, when I hear a family is resorting to shift work overnight to hold a little baby to sleep, my heart goes out to them, but it does send a shiver down my spine as well. And this is the reason why those early parenting centres are available. It's for these really tricky situations that some families find themselves in. There's no shame in reaching out to them to get some real hands-on support for you whilst you support your little one, and continue to be the best parents that you can be. So let us know how you get on, Annie. It will get easier, and there are supports out there for you.
And what an amazing parent, the lengths that Annie and her partner are willing to go to for their baby to help that baby get good sleep. I think it deserves an honourable mention that you would even do that. Like, how incredible. It's amazing. Parents are amazing. They don't realize it often
are.
enough, but you are.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we also heard from Dana. Dana has a 7-month-old baby boy who they successfully moved from co-sleeping to cot sleeping at night using the Ferber method. Okay, so it's not a Sombal method. The Ferber method's something quite different. But Dana says it's not been successful for their day naps. So she wants to know, can they use the supported accelerated approach for naps without confusing their baby, since Ferber is already used overnight? Or could they switch to supported accelerated for both naps and nights? What would you recommend, Laura?
I would recommend just switching to the supported accelerated for both.
Same.
Yeah, because you have tried to use the Ferber for the naps and it's just not working. We want there to be one consistent way for your baby boy to go to sleep. So let's just pivot to using the supported accelerated. It's the intervals between the reassuring your baby are much, much shorter. You can stay alongside your baby, and you may find that that's just the extra level of support that your son needs for the naps versus at bedtime, where the Ferber method has worked, which has the longer intervals and leaving the room and so forth. So during the day, sleep pressure is much lower because it plateaus. It completely falls off a cliff overnight and then it starts to climb again during the day. So before the naps, the sleep pressure is much lower than it is before nighttime sleep. And so some babies may just actually need a little bit more support for the naps. And I think that this is the case for Dana's baby. So yeah, pivot to the supported accelerated for all.
Mm-hmm. I would only want to add to that typically the Ferber method, it's just so quickly just extinguishes any support to fall asleep that usually those babies are just like, right, they're self-settling always. It's, done. Hard and fast and done. So I would just check in on that daily rhythm. Like, I just think,
yes.
Why aren't, like they've got the skills. Why aren't they doing it? So just, check in on the daily rhythm, Dana, because if they're 7 months old, they should be on 2 naps. So if they're still having 3, I'd just drop down to 2. And just making sure they're not over, that daily rhythm makes sense for their sleep needs could be really crucial. And then you might just suddenly find, they're actually fine settling in their cot and they draw on the skills they've already got to do it. So
so maybe actually that's your first step, Dana. Double check the daily rhythm first. Move to 2 naps if your baby isn't already on 2 naps. If they are on 2 naps, just double check that you're not putting them down a little bit too early for those naps, and continue to use the approach that has worked at night. Try that for a few days. If that doesn't work, then switch to the supported accelerated for naps and nighttime.
And I think it's a great idea to standardize the approach once you do figure out that daily rhythm, no matter what you do. It's just good for babies, toddlers, kids, adults probably too, to just, know that these are the same cues that mean it's sleep time. So,
yes.
Yeah. Good luck to Dana.
All right. Yeah, good luck. Now we've got a question from Shannon. So she's on day 2 of the supported accelerated approach with her little boy, who has been protesting for 1 to 2 hours at bedtime and during night wakes. She describes him as a determined sleep fighter and feels confident. It's protest rather than de-stress. But the prolonged crying is making her doubt whether to persist. She wants to know at what point should she alter, pause, or stop the approach.
These questions this week are like on fire. They're such good questions. 1 to 2 hours at bedtime and during night wakes. I just think that's too long. There's something not right there. Like, even though this baby is described as really liking fighting sleep, it's such a long time that if you are getting them up on time, in the morning and powering through the day, and then at nighttime you're still having these troubles, I just think it's sleep pressure. Something is too off there for that to keep going. Although it is only day 2 of the supported accelerated approach. So we would expect there to still be maybe some tricky settles, but I would say generally on day 2, you shouldn't really see what would you say? I would say usually the settles aren't taking longer than 30 or 40 minutes. Like most of them would
Yes.
be 15, 20 minutes, maybe tops. So,
Yes, I frequently hear
mm,
20 minutes for the second
mm,
night, the first settle of the second night, 20 minutes. Like that first time that you use it on the first night can be long. Like on average, it's 3/4 of an hour, but some babies will do a 2 hour. I mean, that's like
the
rare, but
sleep
it can happen.
fighters.
Yeah, there's sleep fighters out there. We need to have a trophy. We can create some Sunbelt trophies that will send the
This
sleep
baby fought to
fighters.
sleep the hardest.
Yes. So for the sleep fighters out there, they might have a really long settle on the first night and maybe one or two long settles overnight. But then ordinarily the bedtime settle on the
Mm.
second night is shorter. Often here 20 minutes, half an hour. Maybe for a sleep fighter it might be 45, but I wouldn't be expecting it to still be 2 hours at bedtime on the
Mm.
second night. So
And by the third night,
yeah,
generally settling is really quick, like 5 to
yeah,
10 minutes is not uncommon. Obviously, it varies a lot. So if you're like, oh no, my baby took 12 minutes or 20 minutes, don't freak out. It's totally fine
no,
for there to be
yeah,
variability. But yeah, I think something is just a little off there. But Shannon, you sound so determined. Well done on just persisting. It must have been a tricky couple of days. And I wonder how things are going now because I'm sure this email didn't arrive today. So curious
no,
to hear. Shannon, let us know how you're going. And yeah, I think, have a look at that daily rhythm.
yeah.
There's going to be
And
something there that we can tweak.
just to give the answers about when do you alter, pause, or stop the approach, we build in those circuit breakers or the resets every half an hour or so. So
Mm,
at bedtime, you would use the approach for, let's say, half an hour. Then, if your baby isn't calming, pick them up, walk around the house with them, get them entirely calm, get yourself calm, and then you go in and you start again, and go again for another half hour, and then do another reset or circuit breaker if you need to, and keep going until they go to sleep and go back to sleep overnight. For the daytime naps, that's when you can try for a period of time and then say, do you know what, we're going to finish this in the car or the pram. Or we'll try
mm,
again in an hour. But at nighttime, we just keep going with those circuit breakers built in.
mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
Uh,
good. All right.
uh,
We also have Danielle, who says she has a baby boy who has 2 1-hour naps, sometimes longer, bedtime at 8:30 p.m. and wake up at 6:30 a.m. He still feeds twice overnight, but resettles quickly within 10 minutes. Occasionally, he wakes upset at 10:30 p.m. and takes about 30 minutes to be resettled using the supported accelerated approach. His wake times before bed range from 3 to 5 hours and he manages really well. So Danielle is wondering if there's anything they should adjust to reduce the night waking.
hmm. It sounds like things are going really well, Danielle. I would be looking at creating a more consistent awake time before the start of the night, I would say.
Mm,
So if it's 3 to 5 hours, I'd just be looking at making that a standard duration. I'm not actually sure how old Danielle's baby is, but I'm guessing under 12 months because he's still on 2 naps, or maybe around 12 months. So I'd be looking at that last wake window being consistent duration so that his sleep pressure is hitting the same point by bedtime each night. And then that's going to help him be able to maintain his sleep more consistently overnight and stop having as many wake ups. If
mm,
it's just if you want to reduce the feeding overnight, the other thing, and that actually that awake time before bed is standard already, then I would be deciding on which, or thinking about, is he ready to drop down to from 2 feeds to 1 feed, picking a day that you're going to say, right, from today or from tonight rather, it's only going to be 1 feed, and say that will be the first time he wakes up after 1 a.m., for example. And then every time he wakes before 1 a.m., just use that supported accelerated approach. Then give him the feed when he does wake up around 1 a.m. and then use the supported accelerated until morning. What we sometimes see for some babies is that if they know that there's that feed coming, they will keep waking for it. And similarly to how we answered one of the other questions earlier, normally it takes just 2 nights for a baby to learn that there are fewer number of feeds overnight. So if it's that you want to drop from the 2 feeds down to 1 feed, that's how I would go about, first of all, checking the daily rhythm. Secondly, just making your decision that today is going to be the day that you move to 1 feed, and then stick with it. And once you've moved to 1 feed, after 3 nights, you can drop that final feed. Would you add anything else, Fallon?
Yeah, I just think that some babies, most babies, really, probably all of them, they don't really know what the time is. So when they wake up overnight, and often at around 10:30, they've had a stretch of deep sleep, and then they're kind of coming up into the lighter stages of sleep, and they're just like, maybe it's a feed time. I don't know. I get some feeds at night. I may as well try and find out what happens. And so for as long as there are any night feeds offered, sometimes they'll just, keep waking, thinking, well, maybe it's time for another one. So it could be that reducing the night waking comes down to, gradually reducing those overnight feeds.
Okay, good luck, Danielle. Let us know how you get on. Let's move on to our next question from Kirsty. Kirsty has a 9-month-old baby boy, and she's got some interesting questions about sleep cycles. So she asks, is it possible that her son's sleep cycles vary? For example, the first sleep cycle of a nap could be 35 minutes, and then the second sleep cycle could be 38 minutes. Or even nap 1 has a 35-minute sleep cycle, and then nap 2 has a 30-minute cycle.
And then should we do these questions one by one?
Or... Yeah, okay, let's do let's do that.
Because I would say to that one, it doesn't matter. There's going to be variability, because when you're in light sleep, it often doesn't take much to wake you. So there's often that little bit of variability in how long the sleep cycle is, simply because, was there a noise? Was there an itch? Was there a little bit of light over there? Did something kind of prompt them to wake up? So I wouldn't be worried if it seems to vary a little bit. We're only talking a few minutes, either side.
Yeah. And I think this is going to be, that answer will relate to the second question. So Kirsty asks, do sleep cycle lengths vary depending on where a nap is taken? For example, a pram nap sleep cycle, could it be different to a cot nap sleep cycle? And she wonders if yes, could that be due to being woken in light sleep by background noise and then resetting the clock in a way? And she's interested in how she would know when to wake him to maintain our daily rhythm. And I think that's, you go.
Yeah, it's similar kind of answer, but sleep cycle lengths don't vary depending on where a nap is being taken. It's just a case of, is there something waking them? So some parents will say, if they're, it's like the earlier one, if they're being held, they'll sleep for 40 minutes. If they're in, or longer, I think it was, but as an example, if they're being held, they'll sleep for 40 minutes, but if I put them in their bassinet, they spring awake after 20 minutes. It's just that they are being bothered by, oh, hang on, I'm not where I was, and it's enough to kind of wake them up. So how would you know when to wake the baby to maintain our daily rhythm? I would just look at the average, what's the average sleep cycle length, and aim for roughly that and be good enough.
Yeah. And in this instance, it might be that it's, 35 minutes. Good enough. And just be thinking about, that they could well just be being woken out of that lighter sleep a little bit sooner when they're in the pram, because there's interesting noises. And that may be why you're seeing that it's napping for a little bit shorter in the pram, for example. Kirsty's next question is it normal for babies to move around in their sleep, even when not transitioning to the next sleep cycle? Her son does this a lot, and that, again, she finds it hard to determine when would be the best time to wake him up.
I'm just looking at the age, 9 months old. Look, I would be concerned if there wasn't a stretch of time of pretty still sleep. There are always babies that will be outliers with this, but generally when we're in deep sleep, we're very still. So if it is just constant movement, then I'd be like, oh, are they snoring? Do they have noisy breathing? I'd be actually thinking
Yeah.
about the sleep apnea side of things. Why are they so
Yes.
restless and what's going on there? So, they could be still for the first half of the sleep cycle and then rolling around all over the joint for the next half. I wouldn't be necessarily worried about that because babies can be super active as they go into lighter stages of sleep. But similar answer to before, I suppose, look at the average sleep cycle length and just go with that in terms of determining when you might wake him up.
And again, this next question just is resonating your answer to the last question. She says, is it normal to show a lot of tired signs throughout a large chunk of the awake time, but still be able to be playful, smiling, interacting with toys, crawling around and pulling up to stand? He'll often play with his ears and rub his eyes. But she avoids trying to put him to sleep too early to avoid a potential long settle if it's not his usual nap time. And I'm thinking that, yes, if we didn't know that he was always moving around in his sleep, I would be answering that going, yeah, look, some tired signs and boredom signs can be really closely linked. And if your baby can be distracted and is mostly content during their awake time, then there's nothing to worry about, mostly. But in this instance, I am wondering if perhaps if he is very restless in his sleep and that is having an impact on the quality of his sleep, maybe that's playing out in his awake time where he does seem tired for a lot of the time.
It's definitely worth checking. But I think it's something about, being quite engaged, interacting with toys. If he was really tired, I just feel like that would probably start to suffer. Often people say, oh, I know they're tired because they get so clumsy, and then they get frustrated at their clumsiness and that sort of thing.
And cranky and a bit grizzly, certainly not playful and smiling.
Yeah. So it's definitely something to think about. Like, if you're thinking he's not quite right during the daytime and he's super restless, this was the perfect podcast to submit that question, Kirsty. We're already talking about these things. So I hope that helps. It's a really good little dive into sleep cycle links in that little set of questions. We probably could have made that an episode, I reckon. So Laura wrote in. Laura has an 8-month-old that has a very regimented sleep routine that works really well. So she has a 12-hour and 25-minute sleep need and goes to bed at 8 p.m., wakes up at 6:30 a.m. in the morning. She has 2 naps in the day, one for an hour and another for 45 minutes. And Laura wakes her up from both. She's thriving and a very happy baby. So despite being sort of woken up from naps and nighttime sleep to kind of keep things on track, she sort of seems to be getting sufficient sleep. She's quite happy. So Laura is wondering, at what age would you stop being so regimented with regulating the total sleep needs and just let them kind of wake up at the time that suits them?
Well, I would do it from about now, Laura. So essentially, once we have our little ones in a good daily rhythm, so we can let our foot off the brake and say, let's see what happens now if we don't wake them in the morning at that set 6:30 time, for example. You don't need to go wild, and if they're still asleep at 8 a.m., things are really going to fall over. But you could say, let's just see what if I didn't wake her at 6:30. What time would she wake naturally? Maybe she'll wake up at 6:35 or 6:40 or 7. And then you go, okay, let's see if we do that for the next few days. Does sleep stay on track? Does she still continue to maintain her sleep overnight? And if she does, brilliant. But if you find that things start to fall over, she starts to take a long time to fall asleep at the start of the night again, or throws the naps off, or she starts to wake up overnight again, then you go, oh, okay, we actually have to be a little bit stricter with this little one. So always what we're doing is when we first design that daily rhythm, we're basing it on the sleep needs that we first calculated the first time we started observing their sleep. We then create the daily rhythm. We then bring in any settling approaches that we need to do. We then see the improvement in sleep. And after a week or two of excellent sleep, then we just go, let's just relax things a little bit and see what happens. Most of the time, we've got it right straight away, but sometimes there are children who will sleep a little bit longer. And sometimes there are children who, no, it wouldn't go the other way at that point because we would have tightened it if things hadn't worked. So it's always worth just giving it a go. And you may find, Laura, that your 8-month-old does sleep in for a little bit longer. It might only be 10 minutes more, and they're fine.
Yeah. And if you do get to that point where you think, oh, maybe we could trial just adding a bit more sleep back in, relaxing it a bit, I would say don't relax everything. Like I really would pick one time of day where you say, okay, I'm going to let them have maybe an extra 15 minutes or something, like with a sleep in. I'd just let them go 15 minutes longer for a week and see how things go. Give it some time, see if they adjust. And I really like Laura's question because there are some babies where I often describe it as some babies seem to have these circadian rhythms that are really resilient, where we get them into a pattern and then they're off and away and they just maintain that pattern and things are pretty great and pretty predictable without a lot of effort and without having to be really regimented. And then there are other babies where they have these slippery sliding circadian rhythms where the minute we try to just let them have a little bit extra sleep, everything falls over. Like the nights just turn terrible. And it's like, how? It's 10 minutes or 15 minutes more sleep. Like, what is happening? But it's like the circadian rhythms are just desperately trying to break loose and then they'll just turn to absolute chaos. So it depends a little bit on the kind of baby you've got. And same with toddlers, same with children, same with teens. Some of them they'll just fall into a rhythm, and others you have to be really, really, watching it and kind of keeping an eye on it because they can be that slippery. So
yes.
Yeah. We have just had the best questions this week. I know I say that a lot, but I think there's just been a really lovely set of questions that have touched on some really great things that maybe some things we haven't actually talked about before, which is kind of amazing at episode 102.
Yeah. Someone
said to us the other day, how are you finding anything new to talk about? And it's like, well, we just answer the parent questions. Like there's always a different angle or but no, that's right. It's great. All right, so let's wrap this up. Like we said earlier, if you have sent in a question to the podcast and we haven't answered it, please just remind us, send it through to us again, because we certainly don't do it on purpose. It's just a bit of chaos lately. Don't forget that we have our night waking masterclass that's available in each of the Sonbell programs has a night waking masterclass. So if you're struggling with night waking and you remember, go and watch it. And someone did ask why we don't have subtitles on that video. And it really just comes down to my technological ineptitude. I just could not, technology was doing weird things to me that day. But I do have a plan to somehow figure out how to get subtitles on it without other elements of the video doing completely random, spurious things. So
yes.
Anyway, I might have to call on my tech-savvy husband to help me with that one. But it will come because we know the value of subtitles, especially when you're holding a sleeping baby and you don't want the noise on.
Yes.
If you'd like to buy us a coffee, please do. There's a link in our show notes. We always love that. And of course, if you're listening along and you're struggling with sleep or settling, our Sonbell programs are super comprehensive. But we also have an amazing team of sleep practitioners. And, there's a lot of availability right now. We've got new practitioners on board who are opening up new appointments all the time. So it's probably one of the easiest times to get an appointment with us. In the past, it's taken 3 or 4 months at some point. So if you're needing that real one-on-one support, we're totally here for that. So check out the link in the show notes. But otherwise, that's another episode wrapped up, Laura.
Yay, awesome. Thanks so much, everyone. Bye-bye.